afternoon, and welcome to Adventures in DeFi Kingdoms. This is Raf streaming to you live high above the keep in the hot air balloon. Tonight, we have a very special guest, or I should say this afternoon, tonight for him, special guest Thanos. Thanos, how you doing?
Hey everyone, quite well. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And as always, Neindorf, how you doing?
Doing well, yeah. A little more energetic middle of the day here, like you said, Central Time. So let's get to it.
Yeah, just had a nice lunch, so yes, I am feeling full of energy right now. Um, well, I guess without further ado, do you have any? We hadn't really had a lot of time to prepare for this. Do you have a question of the day lined up, or should we just jump straight into the content?
Yeah, today let's just jump in. Yeah, given that I'm off cycle a little bit here, I haven't had time to sit down and really come up with a good one.
Understandable. All right. Well, let's first conversation I want to get into is today is Tuesday, June 14th, and yesterday was Monday. There was two presentations by the DeFi Kingdoms team. The first presentation was the game mechanics team talking about some of the upcoming features, and that was Hubert presenting on that. And then second, we had Frisky Fox and Dreamer and Rooster presenting on kind of the state of the game. So I was not able. I caught a little bit of the second one live, some parts of it, and then read, of course, the Sandwich Punch notes afterwards. I'm still kind of starting to collect my ideas and form my thoughts on this. I have a feeling it'll also take me just a few more days once I do read all the information out there. Were you guys able to catch us live? Neindorf, were you able to catch it live?
So my wife and Gen Zero or Gen Ones and I were all on our way back from the Minnesota Twins game, so we were traveling most of the day yesterday. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it live either. But I have read Sandwich's recap, which again always are great.
Right. Thanos, were you able to catch it live?
Yeah, I was. It was 1 a.m. my local time, and uh, I did hear all of it. Yeah, yeah. And to imagine my wife was traveling, so I had to wake up at 7 for my baby with Jen to take care of it.
Tough
Anyway,
commitment.
uh, yeah. No, it went well. It was surprisingly good news. I mean, that was the kind of direction that seems to be the most viable and sustainable that the team can take. Naturally, we have a lot of pain ahead of us, but we're here for the long term, and that's what counts. That we're going to get through this.
Yeah, I think it was encouraging for me to start seeing them exercise some more permanent solutions, I'll call it. I've been fortunate enough in my time that I haven't had to go through very many company style events like this. I do work in the private sector for a private company, and we have had a downturn once before, and fortunately we have a really great CEO and leader. And one of the things that he said with me that has really stuck was, the ship's not sinking, but I'll be damned if I let it. And so I think it's and then he really led through a commitment to making some hard choices that helped us, keep our sustainability as a corporation. And I think that's something that sometimes you just have to step back and start making some really hard choices. And I want to first acknowledge that this has been hard on the DeFi Kingdoms team members. We saw some news yesterday that some of the team members have left, or or they're changing their pay arrangements. I think it's also been really hard on the investors in the community as well. Jewel price is not where anyone wants it to be. So I think we're all kind of feeling the pain. And I think I echo your sentiment, Thanos, that I was encouraged that they're starting to make some of these hard choices, because that's what has to be done if we're going to be successful and viable. So, Neindorf, was there any choices in particular that stuck out to you that you're like, yeah, you know what, they nailed it here?
Yeah, I mean, and there was a little bit of chatter on our Discord. Very little. It's been quiet, I think, because everybody's kind of waiting for, what's going to happen. But people were saying, well, if only they would have swapped out, some Jewel for stables a while back. And that's all well and good. But if they would have chosen the U.S. Tether stablecoin, the game would have gotten absolutely destroyed. So, hindsight's 2020. You can say you should have done this or that, but that's we're past all that now. I think at this point, moving forward, I like their approach. They're offering deals, sustainable deals to people, and maybe they're realizing in some of their areas they're a little heavy in staff, or probably not heavy, but necessarily maybe relatively heavy compared to some other departments.
Given the climate too.
Correct. Yep. And so that's, yeah, I mean, that's how it goes in the business world. People, you have to right size in order to stay afloat. So I think I'm really happy with what I'm seeing, that they're taking steps to correct things. Maybe it could have been done a little sooner, but I don't think anybody would have necessarily thought we'd get this far this fast. And maybe that's why we're here.
Thanos, you're a seasoned tech executive. What are your thoughts on some of these large decisions that they're making? I guess is there one that sticks out to you that you feel like they did it right, or maybe they could have done it a little differently?
Well, my key takeaways, and those are all positive, that first of all, they made a lot of great acknowledgments. Okay, they admitted a lot of wrongs that they've done. They understood, they pinpointed where they did wrong and felt sorry for that. So that is a great step towards great leadership, right? That confirms basically that they don't have their heads buried in the sand. There's no arrogance, there's no hubris involved between the team. They're very feet on the ground. They understand the risks, they understand where they are, the environment that has formulated around them, and they are ready for outside help. That is the most critical part right here, because it has been established that, well, no easy way to put this, but they're a little bit, under the water in terms of managing the success that they have achieved. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, the key takeaway for me was that Frisky was extremely humbled, nearly in shock on where the situation is right now. And combining those two is exactly the way out of here, which is, on the first hand, recognize where you did wrong, get humbled by your mistakes, and seek outside help, which is exactly what was elaborated and explained. And the fact that they signaled that they are now starting basically an official fundraiser is only going to accelerate the process of getting out of the hole where we found ourselves in.
Yeah, and I think I also agree that it's a very positive sign that they're asking for the venture capital help. I think their path to this point was understandable, but somehow it's also a really challenging time to be asking for money in this climate as well. So as much as they are now asking for it, I could see this being difficult. What did you guys kind of think about the general sentiment that it sounds like they have about a year's worth of solvency to cover server costs? Does that make you feel good, bad, indifferent? Thanos, let's start with you.
Yeah, servers do not produce software. They manage to, yes, they have solvency for the server costs, but they do not have for paying
for the payroll, right?
Right. Yeah, and that has become evident. I mean, they didn't really elaborate exactly on the treasury situation, the cash in hand, but we can have a pretty good idea based on the addresses that are available to us. How much all of those combined are, the fact that those basically are not to be liquidated. So they are 1.5 million in current dual price. Mm-hmm. Okay, that doesn't mean that it's 1.5 million cash at hand right now. So we're not looking at a scenario where this gets liquidated immediately, and that is the runway. So they have a small six figures here and there from the cash payments that they've done via Coinbase, etc. Long story short, I don't believe that they're going to be able to pay salaries beyond September, given how the market is going to go, which is even worse. Okay, this isn't the end of it. We haven't reached bottom yet. We don't know where it is. And the situation was quite and is quite dire. But until September, it's enough time starting now to raise capital and become solvent again.
Yeah. And they did mention that, and this is where, kind of my knowledge is dropping off, but that they are now paying and I believe they're making the transition to paying some of the salaries in Lockjewel. Now, what amount or percent, that seemed unclear to me. Did you understand or interpret that the same way that I did?
No. What they said was that they have now fixed USD prices.
Mm-hmm. I
And that was also in the announcement by Mr. Fong that they're in the process of converting part of the treasury into USD. This process hasn't started yet, but
may,
that's so we know.
Maybe I'm making something up. I thought I saw somewhere that they were also looking at restructuring some of their salary payments to be in Lockjewel. That would be a little more of a deferring the short term costs. So, well, since I'm kind of caught up in the air with that one, any other short term calls to action that you guys feel is worth rehashing here for our listeners? All right.
Well,
Go ahead.
Nandor, go ahead.
No, no, I think I'm more interested in your take on this. Honestly, I've not had a ton of time, and I'm not really more of a business expert, so I think rely on you a little bit more for this one.
Well, yeah, I mean, there aren't much actionables for us to do other than, be there and state our viewpoints
Mm-hmm.
and where we are. I mean, uh, reality is I did campaign for this outcome, and now that we reached to that outcome effortlessly, in the sense that, what was announced was exactly what I was hoping for, that DFK is fundraising, it's looking for VC help, it's looking for AAA game help, and all sorts of other help. I'm content on that respect, on that regard, in terms of the number one issue, which is survival. And I know that there's nothing that we can do at this point. Everything is at the hands of Dreamer right now.
Right.
So I guess, you know, maybe for our listeners out there, I'm a big fan of the show Shark Tank, right? And speaking of venture capital, that's always what comes to mind. So maybe, how would you see it playing out if, say, they did get a venture capital deal, and I don't know what percentage of their company they would have to give up for this cash, but how would you see that playing out? Do you think they would still maintain the exact same roadmap? Would they try to keep pushing exactly as they are, or do you think we'd see some significant changes?
Well, we will be seeing changes, and that is good. That is what is expected. At this stage, a VC is going to come guns blazing in the sense that you're going to need very big capital to have neck breaking speed of growth. I'm talking about, I would hope that we raise at least 20 million, more likely 30 to 50. And those will represent roughly a 20 to 30% stake on Kingdom Studios. And that definitely will come with oversight and accountability. The board will be reshuffled. There are going to be seats on the board for the VCs, the investors. It's going to be a more proper corporate structure. The C-suite executives are going to be accountable to the board. And that will bring process, organization, robustness, rigidity, aside from survivability. And these are the virtues that we want, we expect from this movement, because they do need help, they do need structure, they do need the coaching of people that have done this before. And that's what needed to get us to the next level. Okay.
Do you think there's a possibility that is anybody on the team more of, I would say, either crypto wealthy or independently wealthy that would step up and be like, "Hey, I'll give you this," or do you think it'll be entirely outside sourced?
I cannot say that. The way that was phrased from Dreamer is that they're actually looking for serious stakeholders. They're not looking just for dumb money. And it would be very unfortunate if that's what they end up with, because reality is 20, 25, 50 million can easily be pocketed by a whale. But that doesn't mean that you're going to get the outcome that you want, because that doesn't mean that then you're going to get the right people in the team, the right kind of oversight, the right kind of consultation and help that DFK badly needs right now to grow 10x and eclipse the market, because that's the game. That's how the game is played on high tech, high growth startups, right? It's either domination or you go home. And to dominate the industry at the stage where DFK is right now, having nearly 1,000 competitors behind their backs, they need to move fast. They need to burn capital. They need to have the right players that know the right moves, that know the right people to support this growth.
Right. And you need the attention of the whales from an investor standpoint as far as purchasing heroes and lands, not as far as venture capital, I think is what you're saying and what I would 100% agree with.
Can you say that again? Because I don't think that's what I said.
No, I just mean that we would like whales to play the game, not own the game.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And I think I'm 100% on board that that's exactly what needs to happen. Whales need to play, not own.
Yes.
So let's transition over to something that was brought up in the AMA that Metis has been, I would say, kind of keeping his foot on the gas on, so to speak, is the talking about the issue of unlocked jewels going to happen. I don't know precisely when it is. It's the August timeframe, I believe, based on the current Epoch schedule. Once locked jewel starts to unlock, that's going to put more possible sell pressure, or at least the supply of jewels is going to increase quite a bit. And without any potential large-scale game changes, that could impact the game pretty seriously. And I know the DeFi Kingdoms team, their answer, I think this is, if there was a spot where I felt like I wish there was more information about it, it might be here. Do you, first, Thanos, do you agree with that, that you wish that we had more information? And then maybe second follow-up question is, do you see a venture capital firm helping the team better navigate this relationship between whale incentives and changes that must happen for the balance of the game? Because it feels like, and maybe I'm just reading too far into it, but it feels like the team is waffling a little bit on possible changes that could be made to the structure of Unlocked Jewel, even though those changes would likely have to go through some kind of community vote or proposal process. But it feels like they just don't know quite how the whales will react. Therefore, we're not seeing a lot of ideas yet. And I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, basically we have zero information around what the team is thinking on Locked Jewel, and you are right on that Metis has been raising the topic for nearly 2 months now, and it is a very serious topic if you see the numbers. And all the consequences that you mentioned are real and are going to happen if nothing gets done. Mm-hmm. The problem now is that what can be done, I cannot answer that question. This is something that is not on my expertise. We've been debating this on our guild, as what the team did say, what Frisky did say on the topic, is that this has to be community driven. And we take that literally. Now we are kind of debating internally what would be the right kind of proposal to put on the builder's website to start a bottom-up kind of effort in terms of a proposal. We started from, okay, here's a proposal. Let's delay Lock Jewel unlocking for 2 years. Then somebody comes in and say, hold on a minute, that was the premise why I came here. And there are also tax ramifications for me in doing that. And why should I give you that without taking something back? And then we started having a conversation of, getting exchanges, getting perks in return for keeping your jewel locked for another year. And that's where the debate is right now. The problem now is and follows back to another topic that I would like to discuss a little bit later, which is DFK has failed to build any feedback collection mechanisms. So all of these conversations happen ad hoc, happen peer-to-peer. You heard Frisky yesterday talk about that he chatted with a few whales. That's not the right kind of feedback collecting. It's not structured, it's not appropriate. And at the end of the day, it's not right for the CEO of a project to have 3, 5, 10 people that he consults with to draw policies that affect everybody in the dark, in DMs. Okay.
And
so
that's the what I was kind of hoping for with my leading question of I think that's a way that a venture capital firm could bring some more structure and maturity to this process specifically. So they're not, I think there's obviously they're going to have to make some choices, or the community is going to have to make some choices, and not everyone is going to win. And we somehow need to make the choice that threads the needle of allowing the project to survive, with not upsetting enough people that they're willing to stick around, even though, and it feels like, I guess, and this is where it's just probably more of my anecdotal understanding of this and not really based in fact, but at times I do worry that they just pull feedback from some of the whales, and it kind of like you're indicating that was his communication feedback mechanism. So I guess my really roundabout way of saying I totally agree with you that they need a more formal structure for community feedback. I also hope that the VC firms can help them navigate how to make some of these changes and know that it might upset a whale or two, but as long as they're doing the numbers on the survival of the overall project, I think that's good for the game.
Yeah, I don't see anybody being upset as long as everybody's voice is heard. And I feel like the locked jewel problem is going to be a hybrid solution where it's going to be optional for you to keep your locked jewel locked for 1 or 2 more years and receive X rewards for that. Whoever wants to opt into that, they can. Whoever doesn't want to, they can as well. Bottom line is that the price is going to tank even more. We know that, and it's not going to be towards anybody's interest to get their locked jewel and sell them into the market. So we're going to see the market self-adjusting in a sense.
That makes sense.
You sell your jewel for a cent?
Oh, yeah. I guess I just wanted to, for our listeners' sake too, that's like Epic 52, right, where this starts to happen. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of that.
Because I want to say it was, so if I'm remembering this correctly, we're at the period now where there's, 4x, if you will, jewel in the gardens. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that continues until all the emissions run out. And I want to say that runs out at Epic 52, which is effectively 1 calendar year from when it launched. And then I believe that is the very same moment when Lock Jewel will start unlocking. So you're creating this dangerous cross where now not only is the Jewel LP pools not incentivized other than transactions in a normal DEX, now Jewel's going to flood from both the gardens and from people's locked Jewel accounts. So yeah, I think and I think that's important for people to remember. I think people forget that people are going to want to pull LP once there's no additional rewards on top of the normal DEX rewards. Like, that's not going to keep whales with 20, 30, 40, 100,000 jewel in there anymore if they're getting just normal DEX fees.
Correct. Yes.
All right, so there's a question over here in YouTube chat. Let's talk about the rest of the AMAs, and then I think that'll, I'd like to get more into the guild conversation and communities. I know you have a lot of thoughts on that, Dano. So we have EM over in chat saying, I think Hubert has one of the most important roles in the game development. Did he instill more or less confidence in his responses to the questions during the AMA? I'll go last. Neindorf, I know you didn't get a chance to watch this, but were you able to read what some of his answers were in terms of the game mechanics, and how do you feel?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I think he does a good job of being, I would say, more factual. So I think that's kind of what I like. That's how I think. But I'm not sure if you're able, because of that, I'm not sure if I was able to, at least in text, to get a whole lot out of, bullish, bearish sort of thing. So I think that's probably about all I have because text it's hard, it's really hard to get the emotion out of reading someone's text.
Thanos, what are your thoughts on Hubert? Maybe whether his critical nature of his role, or did he give enough information to make you feel one way or another about the game development?
Well, Hubert did was emotional and did reaffirm his commitment to the game, whatever happens, and that is true for most of the core developers. But that, to me, doesn't mean anything. I'm a little bit more cynical when it comes to businesses and how they run and how they survive and how they operate. The kind of problems that we are talking about are way beyond operations of the game. Hubert is part of the operations of the game. And the kind of level that we are discussing right now are a little bit up, how can I say it, at a different scale. So one thing that was never in doubt was DFK's ability to build a nice game. We know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say I'm looking forward to seeing more information on the future combat system. I'm of the opinion that you're going to need to have people playing a combat system in order for the game to really be self-sustaining in the future. And so if it sounds, he's reiterated, and it's not the first AMA that they've mentioned this, but they are still in testing development. They have a full combat system out there. The duel system is not a precursor to what combat's going to be at all, and it's not even like a stepping stone for it either. And so I guess I'd love to see more information, even knowing that it's under heavy development of what the future combat system is going to look like. I think that would give me a little more confidence. So yeah, I think a combination of it didn't reduce my confidence in the game, but I do wish that they would be a little more forthcoming with some information on the things that are in development.
We do have some speculation as to the purpose that duels are going to play for PvP, and that is to develop the matchmaking system,
Mm.
which on a PvP kind of game in the scale of Defy Kingdoms is really complicated and it's make or break. So you either manage to have a good matchmaking system and they're gonna utilize the entire time from launching duels upwards to PvP to optimize and reiterate on that so that when PvP launches, there's not going to be much, inconsistencies, unfairnesses, and OP kind of situations. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So kind of like what Arena. So Arena kind of took the opposite approach, right? It's a third party app. They were kind of like, hey, let's go get a beta out there so people have something to do, and we can kind of test the market for our tool, as soon as possible. And like, it was clearly lopsided, and we've talked about that, and they're pivoting and they're making improvements. So we're kind of thinking that it sounds like the DFK team is kind of taking the opposite approach. They kind of want to release version one polished, not a version 0.1 beta. Does that seem fair?
I think so. I guess time will tell which is on the right approach. I'm not convinced one has to be. There will probably be one that's better than the other, but I don't know which it is.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
All right. So, Thanos, you mentioned a little bit ago some conversations that you had going on in your guild, and we wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about also what you've been working on with the development projects, how guilds play a role, and how the community developers have had the opportunity to interact with the DeFi kingdoms. I would say, or maybe the lack of the ability to interact with the core team, and some of the challenges that third party groups have had interacting with the I guess the surrounding teams, specifically the Knights. So let's first talk about the kind of some of the community challenges that you wanted to go through. Where do you want to start with that? I guess give us something that you feel like maybe needs improvement, and then maybe something that you feel like they're really hitting the nail on the head.
Right. When it comes to community, we have all sorts of problems, and I would prioritize the biggest one as the complete lack of collecting structured feedback. There are no mechanisms or ways for the community to express debate in a meaningful manner that stays aside from the three main channels on Discord, which we all know that this isn't the right kind of medium to have a sensible discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So, there has been a complete lack of any other sort of tool that has been built towards that direction. For instance, discourse. Okay, we now have a discourse for builders, and we can see how this has now been overutilized, hacked in a sense, to serve as a debate medium. So we're talking about tokenomics. It's not a proposal. It is something that we want to talk about. And more topics are going to come in there that are going to be related to that. But the feedback eliciting mechanisms are not, there's no silver lining. There's no one thing that you have to do. It's basically an array of channels that you need to leverage, to employ, and tools that you also need to deploy, and operations within the team to capture that feedback and process it. The way that the team operates today is based on anecdotes. Whatever comes up as a copy-paste from within Discord to the Slack, those are the exact words of Frisky when I asked him on an AMA 3 AMAs ago, I believe. And then you get basically knee-jerk reactions to huge backslashes, like, for instance, what happened with duels. Yeah, we heard your feedback. That was, the entire Discord got up on their feet. And you get knee-jerk reactions on these topics. So it's basically a switch and on-off versus having a spectrum of capturing the entire feedback across the entire community. The community doesn't understand, isn't self-aware of what are the topics that are important. As you watch, you stand and lurk for as many hours, days on the price discussion channel or the hero discussion channel. And I'm not going to even mention general. You're going to see different people bringing up different entirely topics that are, to their concern, completely disconnected between each other. And you don't have a measure to gauge how many people are also having this kind of problem. So what you end up with is basically winging it. Whatever comes to mind, whoever has the loudest voice. And that's not the way for the scale DFK has, where, when it started back in September and the entire community was in general, and you could capture the sentiment by just looking at it. We're not at that point now. Okay. And this speaks to kind of the disarray and problem of organization DFK has. So we know that they were working on a user voice to collect sentiment and votes for questions on an AMA. This was said back in April. Setting up a user voice, which is a website, it's a product, uservoice.com. It doesn't need more than an hour. Somebody to sit down focused and configure it doesn't need more than an hour. This hasn't happened to today, up to date today. And we need this not just for the AMA, we need this for all the topics, right? And we are, because of the lack of this structure and organization, you see the community creating their own structures, either those being guilds or private discords, where people like-minded congregate and meme, etc. And you basically, it's the recipe that you have to employ for disempowering the community. You don't even have, if you say, I don't have the time to do anything, I don't have the organization, I don't have the resources. You don't even have a governance channel in Discord, although that has been requested explicitly multiple times. Create a governance channel on Discord where we discuss topics that are of general nature that affect everybody and don't fit in general, they don't fit in price discussion, they don't fit in hero discussion. The Discord itself has been abandoned completely. Okay, at this point you have like nonsensical channels. What does it mean to have a crystal veil chat? What does that mean? Discussion, crystal veil discussion. You don't have empowered moderators. The moderators do anything but moderating the conversation. They are tasked with support and troubleshooting. A huge amount of their time is spent on support, okay, which is a function that is a standalone department in a business. Okay, you have a startup, you hire some people to do support. They are tasked with quality assurance and product testing, which again is a standalone department and a function of the engineering operations that you have testing on the products that you're about to release. This is done by knights and moderators. So you have overworked moderators who do all of these tasks and have zero initiative, they have zero, they are not empowered to take initiatives, make up their own minds on situations they see happening, if they see them, because the reality is that the three main channels, hero discussion and price discussion, are completely moderated. That changed in the last couple of months after the big FUD happened, if you recall, and it took 2 days for the decision to come from the top, to give the authority to moderators to ban people that were mindlessly fighting. Within those 2 days where they were asking frisk his head, we lost, 80% of the market cap. And that is the only standing order right now in terms of intervening into what is going on in Discord, is to ban fathers, which is good. I mean, yes. But anything else is a free-for-all. Anybody can say anything about anybody else. There's no code of conduct. There's no respect. Anybody can call you anything. And that's it. You're going to have to fight for yourself. And when things get out of hand, moderators get pinged. What happens? It's like, I call it drive-by moderation. Yeah. So, you create this environment that basically boils down to high toxicity. That's the kind of people that remain then, that thrive in this environment. And this is a completely unwelcoming environment for new users. I don't know if you watched General, right?
No, I left General months ago. I mean, truth be told, I think we were struggling with it a long time, and that's where, kind of for our own selfish purposes, but the conversations that Neindorf and I, and some of the people that we interact with regularly want to have, weren't happening there, or were being bled out by, I call it Meme Central, is what I call general chat. And nothing wrong with memes, but I think if you want to have a constructive discourse, that's where we created our own Discord channel. And while we don't have a conventional guild like you do, I think we're going for a lot of that same purpose. So this feels a lot to me like a problem of scale, where I think that it was a lot easier for them to stay connected to the community that when they were smaller, and as they have grown and expanded, the same mechanisms just aren't working for the size that they are now. You mentioned a couple tools that you've seen work well with the user voice as an example, or even something I think of. So without going down that hole of talking about different tools, are there communities that you've seen that have been able to effectively implement what you're looking for that you've seen in the past that are this size and magnitude?
Yeah, and this changes over time and with scale. So depending on the scale of where you are, you employ different set of tools.
Mm-hmm.
Even Discord has, a user board where people can go on and say, "Hey, I need this and this and that," and other users come in and can comment, can vote, and then what do? They pick out the cream, the top voted proposal suggestions, and that is the feedback cycle of the product. That is what agile development is, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but that was, anyway, that is the kind of a modern way of developing engineering operations. It's the cycle of collecting, listening feedback and collecting it. Now, what would be a good recipe for DFK? Well, at the scale that DFK is, again, a user voice, both for an AMA and as a general feature request. How many times have users asked for a quality of life improvement on gardens? Everybody's moaning. Well, let's have it on a user voice and let's see how many thousand votes that gets. If it gets 30,000 votes,
Right.
It's not going to be as easy to thwart on every AMA that this gets raised, right? Then have a discourse that is dedicated to governance of the DFK matters, proper categories, proper moderation. Have governance channel on Discord if you want, and that is an optional because this can go easily very bad. It needs a little bit more active moderation. Perform surveys on Twitter, Reddit, Discord, anywhere we can reach your audience, wherever that is. Produce results, publish them, and note your takeaways. That's called accountability. Guilds. You have guilds. You have the most engaged players of DFK formed guilds. That is a ready set form of representation already there for you. Instead of leveraging it, you are marginalizing it. And we've reached a point where hosting a summoning event got moderated, our posts deleted, and threatened to get banned because we posted that, hey, we're going to hatch 20 eggs and make 20 summons on our guild's stream. Come join us. It's completely incomprehensible, the kind of anti-community behavior that's going on DFK right now. It's self-inflicting.
So how do you approach providing this advice and guidance when your opinion is going to be probably more negative than the DFK team wants to hear or expects to hear? How do you find that balance of explaining that this message is coming from the place of you wanting to be invested in the long-term health and success of this, but also that things need to change in order for us to have a more healthy and long-term successful community?
Well, I'm trying all the channels, and I'm trying any medium that is available to me, whether that is DMing from moderators to knights to directors of community, whether that is asking these questions on an AMA, campaigning in Twitter, in Discord, all the same. And let's not forget, we didn't do an introduction on where I'm coming from and what I do, okay? Hello, I'm Thanos. I'm at my 40s, and at this point, I call myself a retired Web 2 engineer. Past 10 years, I've been managing engineering teams in startups, getting startups from 0 to 10. And I left this career to get to become full DGen on Web3. And it has been since January that I have been working full time producing content, tools, and services for the DeFi Kingdom's ecosystem. I have delivered two major products that are working on the ecosystem. One of them is DivKey, which is a quality of life and quest automation bot that has now over 7,000 heroes under management. And I have produced DFK Solver with two of my partners, which is a summoning PV calculator that finds the most profitable summoning pair for you. And these are my ventures. I'm also an admin on the unofficial DFK developers Discord. I have authored multiple libraries that help developers develop for DFK. So it's hard to find a more engaged, more committed, more invested person than me on the DFK ecosystem, and that has been established and known at this point between, I would say, the entire team, and I have communication with all of them. I constantly campaign for what I'm telling you, and I'm constantly hitting deaf ears. Now, my mind, I don't think that that's because of malice. It's simply because of lack of organization. And this goes back to why I strongly believe that DFK does need help, does need oversight and accountability that a VC will bring. And given time, all of those problems and inconsistencies and lack of organization are going to find their way and get fixed eventually.
Or we'll die trying, I suppose.
At the end of the day, yeah. I mean, you can knock the door so many times, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
One more thing here. Sorry, Neindorf.
yep, you're fine.
How do you manage to, Thanos, how do you manage to keep your kind of thoughts collected in an environment that's so prone to whiplash? I mean, is this something that one of the things that's challenging is like the speed of development. And, I think it in a way, it complements your engineering, but you've probably developed tools faster than, that the team, in this case, DeFi Kingdoms, can reasonably vet those to understand, are they things that they would be willing to put a third-party stamp, or, stamp of approval on a third-party system. So how do we navigate this environment that's so fast acting, and can react so quickly? Is it patience? Is it, what's the right amount of time that we need to give the team a fair chance to respond, I guess?
Yeah, well, we are nearly the limits. And that last AMA yesterday was a tipping point for me. If I didn't hear what I expected to hear, which was exactly what I wanted to, sorry, what they said was exactly what I wanted to hear and expected. Mm-hmm. If that wasn't the case, then I was already preparing myself mentally to make the U-turn. There are more trees, in DeFi. But now, that fortunately didn't have to happen. And the problem that you touched on, and now we are transitioning from the community problem into the builders problem, is that much of these problems get driven due to the risk aversion that has been developed inside the DFK team. So they have a very, very, very low risk tolerance, which isn't fitting for the kind of startup that they are. And they try to mitigate this through policies that are hurting themselves. So the fact that you cannot properly advertise or communicate your third-party service in the Discord or anywhere else is highly problematic because you said, how can they process and put their stamp of approval on the service, on third-party service? Well, nobody asked for that. Nobody asked for the stamp of approval. You don't have to endorse. You don't have to put your head outside and expose and risk, getting a backslash. You don't have to do any of that. Allowing the community to self-regulate and trusting your community to not make mistakes in terms of, what's the biggest fear? That the third party that they endorse rugs is a scam. Well, on the one hand, don't endorse it. On the second hand, if somebody gets scammed by a third party that poses as a good actor on the DFK ecosystem, well, you're not responsible for that. Okay, and you can't claim that argument when on your Discord server you have the seal station where outside of DFK ecosystem projects get constantly plugged and advertised. Pretty sure that within 100, 5 of them are scams and bad actors because it's completely unmoderated, right? Naturally, nobody looks at that. And why don't they look at that? Because they understand that that's a place where clicking is their own responsibility, and most likely it's outside their interests. So we have a channel on the DFK Discord to plug projects outside of DFK, even competitors to DFK, and we don't have a channel for the builders in the DFK to advertise their products. That's completely nonsensical. And this risk aversion is hurting the ecosystem and is hurting the DFK itself. That is why there's a big disconnect between the builders and the DFK team, which we're now trying to bridge with Mr. Phone's initiatives. Mm-hmm. But up until now, there's a complete disconnect between what builders do, what they care about, what they need, and what DFK team understands and how they can work together.
I guess I find it challenging to walk that tightrope between, not placing a third-party stamp of approval, yet also, having it moderating the content or the posts that they're going on there. It feels like there's a lot of a gray area there. Not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying it feels like a difficult one that they're going to have to solve. Well, I cut you off a while back, Neindorf. Also, as a developer, I know you've run into some of these same challenges, and while you probably weren't as close as Thanos was to the U-turn moment, I know that you've tried to, phase all of your development into things that, you're kind of adding life skills or adding your own personal development skills in the event that, this doesn't pan out. Tell me a little more about, how have you kind of walked through that decision as a developer, and have you seen in your time any ways to better shill development, and how do you share that? I'm sorry, I'll stop asking questions here in a moment and let you answer. So I'll let you answer those two questions first, and then I have an interesting transition to throw it back to Thanos.
Okay, yeah. So, Thanos and I had talked, and I kind of had told him about some of our past and how we ended up with the ADFK website in its current iteration. Um, Basically, there was a lot of discussion early on about botting and how it was negative, right? It was being viewed as negative, and there was going to be consequences, perhaps. So I don't know if I've maybe mentioned this or not before on a podcast, but we've basically avoided any sort of thing in our tool with the ADFK website that does an actual on-chain transaction, just so that we couldn't ever be considered, doing a bot, right? It's basically all just utilizing the blockchain nodes for data, and then we're doing data analysis and alerts through Discord and these sorts of features. And then, most recently with our payment system, you don't actually the website doesn't actually do anything with the blockchain other than watch it. You do your own transaction through your own MetaMask because I just it was kind of instilled into me that I didn't want to be in that sacred category of submitting transactions because I wasn't sure if it was acceptable. And I know Thanos, that's kind of what you're talking about is they kind of shied me away from that. And Raph, to your point, that was one of the things that I would have loved to transition into for more personal gain. I mean, sure, writing a website's cool, and I really am having a great time doing it. Um, but I think that would have been the next cool part about getting into blockchain, where look, I'm able to do a transaction, check up on it, and all the sorts of nuances that come, especially on Harmony. It seems like Harmony transactions are fraught with peril, if you will. But that's kind of where I'm at in this is that, it really steered me to a more of a read-only blockchain view when I really want to be out there writing as well. So I do, working for a large publicly traded company, I do echo these sentiments of, getting better feedback. And it's kind of funny. We still struggle with this as a Fortune, I don't know, 30, 40 company. We're gigantic, but we have a slightly different problem because of scale. But the one thing that we do that I think is very easy here is whenever there's these AMAs, for example, there's the upvote system, right? Like it seems like there's one or two people that get on every AMA, and they don't get me wrong, they ask great questions, but maybe they're not the questions that most people want to hear about. I think we should all pose questions, and then the most upvoted questions are the ones that get answered. I think that's one bit of feedback that I would particularly have that I feel like you can ask a question on the AMA, but unless you're a few of those people that get answered every time, you're not likely to get asked to come on stage. Raising your hand, there's too many hands to raise, basically, is what I'm saying. So I don't even know if I answered your question, but this is
You
kind of
did.
the stuff
Yeah.
building up in my head.
And I think that really ties to that kind of, data collection mechanism that Thanos was asking for earlier as well. Something that can help us make sure that we're collecting and then raising the most important issues. So, next question that I kind of want to transition this back to you, Thanos. Neindorf, something that we've worked closely on, and we actually have our own grant proposal out there. And as we're, one of our commenters, Joshua Smith, mentioned that trust is a key issue, and I think that there's lots of ways or forms that is challenging. One of the things that we've kind of thought about in this competitive third-party builders market is how do we, create our grant proposal, give enough information to allow people to know that it's a potentially viable product. And then Thanos, I know that you had a note or a discussion, you wanted to make this a discussion topic, but yet also how do you maintain some level of confidentiality? Because this is, something that we are going after for our own development purposes. And in your case, you've transitioned your full-time job to developing these items. And so how could we, find a better balance of transparency in the right places, but confidentiality in a way that it could also protect some of these build projects in an infancy stage. But, as I say that's not very, I would say in line with what you now see in kind of Web3 development. I guess, Thanos, what are your thoughts on how do you balance that transparency and also that, protection of the developer themselves?
Right. So let me start by saying that I have received grants from Uniswap, Aave, Synthetics, and Balancer. Those are the biggest DeFi protocols that exist. So I have a pretty extensive experience working with the grant communities, the grant teams. I'm pretty close with them. And the first observation I'm going to make is that a lot of wheels were invented here. And that is true for many aspects of the operations of the DFK, but now since we're talking in particular about the grants program, a lot of wheels were invented in the grants program. The question is, you know, how did they come up with this kind of process? In trying to be fully democratic, they left any other consideration out.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest problems falls back to the risk aversion. And due to that is what drove the decision to mitigate the risk that they perceive they have by having a vote by the community to ratify the grant. And this is highly problematic in so many ways. I'm going to get through right now. Before that, let me address the confidentiality. You are correct. I'm building services on top of DFK. Services are useful to people, so much so that they are willing to pay a subscription for those. Naturally, I have competition. Why should my business plan be available to my competition?
Right.
Right? You're going to say, but you're going to receive a grant, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm going to receive a grant. So what? Is this a public sector? Even on the public sector, I believe that there's confidentiality between the proposals that are submitted. Okay. And who is going to evaluate my proposal? You need a fair and transparent process. The way this is happening now, and naturally I'm talking with everybody that has submitted proposals, is you get the assessment by Sandberg and Pianoman. And once you pass that assessment, then there's another secret step that's not mentioned on the process, where now you have to get the approval by the team.
Have any projects made it through the formal process?
No. There's one particular proposal, I don't want to name names, has passed the assessment of Pianoman and Sandberg, which the assessments themselves arrive extremely late, like 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks after you submit the proposal. So you want to venture, you have to wait all this time. And you might hear in 6 weeks that you need to redo your proposal. So this isn't helping the builders, okay? Now, then after that happens and you pass that stage, then you go on to the approval by the TFK team stage, which is a completely opaque process. I'm going to speculate that bottom line, this boils down to getting the frisky approval, which again goes back to bad organization, whereas you don't have, departments, you don't have empowered people, you don't have delegation of responsibility. And once you go through all of those hurdles, then you have to get the community vote, which none of the proposals existing today, which are like at this point months old, have reached to that stage. And when that happens, we are going to be surprised with the lessons learned at that stage, which are going to be a very low participation, which means then that, anybody can swing the vote. And then that means that, anybody basically can suggest anything, but as long as it passes approval by the team, can happen regardless of sentiment of the community. But the reality is, what is the expertise the community has? I'm going to sound a little bit blunt here, to be able to evaluate a technical proposal like one of the ones that I have put down, which is build a DFK indexer engine, which is open source, has XYZ requirements and these specifications, test coverage, it's going to be written in this language, and it's going to operate in that specific way. Who can assess this?
Well, I would hope they have someone on their team. It might not be Sundbear or Piano Man, but
it's gonna be put on community vote.
Yeah, I mean, as a dev, I loved reading yours because I knew actually what was going to happen, and I struggled when we wrote ours. I didn't want to put too much in because none of the other ones had at that time really put any of that level of detail in. But no, I would say I do love what you have, and but you do need a seasoned developer who has gone through many processes and projects in order to, to get that level of detail. So, I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you, Nandorf, my colleague.
Yeah.
That's exactly my point. That it's a conversation and topic that only engineers can appreciate. Now, what can you do? Well, we don't have to reinvent wheels here. Okay, I already offered and suggested that I can introduce Sander. I can introduce to whoever is responsible for redesigning for a third time, because that's what I understood from yesterday's AMA. That the grants program right now is being reconsidered for a third time. So I offered to introduce them to grants committees and people on the established protocols like Aave, Uniswap, who have granted probably 8 figures by now, hundreds of millions. We're at a stage where the poster child of DFK Arena, has been requested to resubmit their proposal and is still pending grant. And it's not grant, it's not the money, it is the collaboration that they desire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how can I interface with the product, DFK, so we can have an integrated experience? If that doesn't move forward, everything is stuck, everything is stale, and nothing progresses. I don't know why.
I don't have an answer for you either.
It,
But
it
I
makes
think
me
that's why we're
wonder.
having the conversation. So yeah, go ahead, Neindorf.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder if uh, is this program or project really appropriate for grants themselves? I mean, is this a small enough thing yet that maybe grants are just we're just too early and you just let builders be builders? Uh, and then, but you do, however, need to provide us, to your point earlier, with some way of advertising our tools. Like, I don't know, Raf and I are definitely not social media moguls here, and trying to get the word out of our tools has been slow and painful, and because we just don't enjoy going out and saying, "Hey, everybody, go look at our thing. Here it is. It's cool." So, yeah, I mean, at some level though, is if it's a business, you have to promote yourself. I get that, but I don't know. You're familiar with a lot of engineers. We typically are a little more introverted than extroverted, so we find that very difficult sometimes.
Yeah,
I
and it's
I
not
agree.
only that, it is the integration with the game. So we need staff, we need help from the team, and we're not getting that. And there are people with money ready to be utilized, ready to become a product, teams, and they are all stalled because they cannot get an answer or a decision on how they can integrate with the product. So Bless has a proposal, VK Arena is another one that's relevant to that. So it's not even professional, right? Because at the end of the day, it is business. These are ventures. It's not like a community work. I received a grant from Uniswap because I wrote an open source library, well, three actually, that help people on board on the Uniswap ecosystem. Big deal in the sense that, okay, it doesn't matter for me. I don't run operations. It's not a business. It's not a venture. It's something that I did. I submitted an application. It got accepted. I received the funds after a month, etc. It was a nice gesture. But if I am a venture, a business that has hired people, I have running costs, it's a completely different situation, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, that's where Raph and I are kind of running this in our spare time in the evenings when our Gen 1s are asleep, more or less. So it's kind of hard for me to remember that we've still got the fiat mine that we go to every day. We're mining that USD, trying to provide ourselves enough free time and as life moves on to work on this stuff on the side. So yeah, that's a good and very important point. I think that distinction between someone who's wholesale committed like yourself and then kind of more of a weekend warrior or evening warrior like me and Raph.
Yeah. And I think the funny thing though is that probably in, like the arena team, and I know this is the case for us and probably the same for you, but collaboration, well, maybe not quite the same, but collaboration for us is the most important thing that we need to be successful, because we don't have that free time. That we can put towards this. Our time is really limited to trying to develop, or we're playing the guessing game first. We're trying to anticipate what's going to come out, and trying to build features that will be relevant to that future. And I wish that there was a lot more connection to the development team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, we bounced around a lot, we covered a ton of topics. Um, did we cover all of your community challenge topics that you wanted to get to, Thanos?
I guess we did, yeah. I mean, we really did touch on everything, and I feel like the only thing left for us from here on out is to make those topics heard as a community. We do have the builders discourse that we can hack and override to push our topics. I intend on laying out all of these thoughts around the community problem and the builders problem in separate, distinct posts that I can then share within the Discord and probably get some traction in that, so that we can get the ball moving. Because, again, I understand that this isn't done on purpose. It's rather than due to the complete disarray and disorganization, they don't have the capacity, the brain bandwidth to consider these topics. And we need to bring them to their attention constantly.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, our listeners out there, we hope to reach more and more, people. I'm sure everybody agrees because we're all kind of in this. We want to see this project succeed, and I think you've kind of laid out some good points here that can help it move in that direction. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know what the infrastructure that the Kingdoms Builder site is built on. I don't know what product that is. If it's just a basic forum style that they
It's
turn
a
into a
forum, it's
website.
discourse forum.
But I wonder if they couldn't somehow transform this into also maybe some of the a better collection mechanism for upvoting also topics that might be nice to see.
That would be user voice.
Right,
But
or user
I
voice.
guess
Yeah.
Discourse is an open platform, it's open source, it has plugins, so probably there is a plugin that allows you to upvote or downvote the proposal.
Yeah. All
Probably.
right. Well, that's all I had for topics today. Nindorf, anything else that you had?
Yeah, let's hear about Thanos the player. What are you doing right now in the game? You got a favorite hero? What's your goal? You trying to summon that elite hair, or what are you after?
Well, funny thing is that I'm not doing any of that. I have my guildmates doing that, and I find my purpose in, to be and where I draw my joy from building tools that help this process, whether those are bots or reports or anything that's related to helping other people enjoy the game more. That's where I draw my enjoyment from. So reality is, yeah, I don't really play the game in a sense. I love creating the tools to play the game.
I can totally understand that. I'm right there with you. It is this interesting balance of, since we've talked about time and the value of time. Um, Trying to split between playing and building is definitely a challenge, but I think right now, especially, I do favor building a little bit with you. I think that could shift in the future, and we'll kind of see how duels plays out in combat, most definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, that's all I had for this afternoon, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. For those of you who are out there, I hope you know that this comes from a place of you know a constructive feedback, that we want to make this as developers and producers of content. We want this to be a community that grows and thrives, and I certainly can can hear that in the passion of your voice, Thanos. So I really appreciate the feedback today, and I think it's important to discuss things in a very healthy manner like this. And as always, Neindorf, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day as well.
Sure. Hey, do you think, I don't know, maybe real quick, do we want to give Danis a chance to maybe give him a few minutes here if he wants to talk about the tools? I know he's briefly mentioned them here, but and we've tried to mention them, but I think maybe he could do his tools a little better justice, and we
Oh
could maybe
yeah,
post a link as
for sure.
well in the notes here.
Yeah, go for it.
As a builder, I want to hear
Well,
it.
thank you. It wasn't necessary. I feel like I've already plugged in enough. So yeah, it's basically two products. One of them is a quality of life bot that helps you perform all sorts of mundane tasks and automate questing for you. This is called Divki. It has its own Discord. It operates entirely from Discord. So you register and you download the bot. It's a binary that you run locally on your computer. And it will then ask you to provide your private key. So it handles your wallet for you. Now, note that this is a private key that corresponds to a single wallet. It's not the seed phrase that manages all of your wallets. So you create a new wallet, you move your heroes there, you put some gas, and let Divkey post them for you. Last week, I delivered a very big update, which is automatic level up. So you pre-configure the stats that you want Divkey to level up your heroes, and it will automatically level them up as they reach to the point when they're ready. This is a bot that I dabbled with personally, my own, since Questing came out, and it's been about a month that I made it a public product. I productized it because it's a very long way from having your own bot to having a product, and every developer in the DFK ecosystem has their own bot. You know that, so. I decided to make that a public service, level the playing field. What was previously the privilege of only the few and the people that would pay and commission such a bot. So, I'm personally aware of people that have commissioned this bot, the construction of automated bots for 5 figures, rewards. And with Divkey, we are now leveling this playing field. Anybody can use the bot. Anybody can automate their heroes, get their free time back, and be able to focus more on the things that matter on the gameplay rather than the mindless kick.
Yeah, you couldn't be
There's a
more
proposal.
community focused than that. The leveling the playing field. That's something that's very near and dear to Neindorf in my heart. Now, I gotta ask you. This is a sarcastic question here, so I hope our listeners take it as such. Do you have an order 66 that you can execute with the program? Because I don't want the clone troopers to turn on me. So as long as you can tell me there's no order 66, then I'll be all in on Divkey.
I did not. Yeah, I did not. The entire control of the bot is with the end user. Now, given every time the bot starts, it's calling home to check whether your license is active and get some credentials that it needs to operate, because it reports on Discord. So it needs credentials to be able to log into Discord. And you can control your bot from Discord. You see all of the quest rewards on Discord being reported. So basically you can manage your bot from your phone. Yeah, and I've been very meticulous around security. My last job was very security aware. We went through an ISO 27001 certification, which is a very rigorous standard to go through. My position as CTO at that company basically meant that I ran the entire process end to end. So a lot of that knowledge and know-how has been passed into Divkey and how it's distributed and the entire security around it. So yeah, and I have an entire section dedicated to security on the Divkey server, Discord server, that you can read and you should read. to better understand the kind of work that is going behind that. And there's an entire proposal on the Builders Program for DFK that, again, elaborates all of those points, more in detail.
And
that was product number one.
Can I a clarifying comment based on some questions here in YouTube? Another measure of security that a user of the DiffKey bot could employ is that when you're entering your private key information, that is for a single one of your MetaMask accounts. That is not the seed phrase for all of your MetaMask accounts. And so I know something that some people have done is that they've only moved over the heroes that they could, quote unquote, afford to lose over into a questing account. And so if an account would become compromised, it would be limited to that one account, not your entire MetaMask wallet. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's exactly correct. Okay. And the reality is that getting that account compromised would be the equivalent of getting your MetaMask compromised. The private key is stored on the file system encrypted. So if you manage to lose that key through a hack or a virus, that would basically equate to the kind of ponage that you would be. It would equate to losing your MetaMask keys. Mm-hmm. There is the trust factor. This is a completely trustful relationship where you trust the vendor of the software, that is me, to not rug you. There's definitely this factor in play. I have an extensive elaboration on why you shouldn't have concerns around that. As first of all, I'm doxxed. Second, I have a very big reputation. If you search for Thanpolas, type now Thanpolas on Google, you're going to get 20, 50 pages of contributions throughout my whole life. So, my reputation is more valuable to me than heroes, which are, by the way, highly illiquid asset. What would I do with 7,000 heroes? Right now, DFK manages 7,300 heroes.
You would overthrow the Jedi Council. That's what we. I want to make sure there's no Order 66 going on here. So, all joking aside, I absolutely appreciate, and you're right, it is a trustful relationship. And as some faulty pokers pointing out, you are fully doxxed, like you said as well. I appreciate the work that you've done, and I guess for what it's worth, I've decided to throw my heroes into it. And I'll be honest, the quality of life improvement, it's there, so it's worthwhile for me and that risk. And I guess it comes down to every individual making that their own choice. So it's not financial advice.
And there are options. You can go fully trustless. DFK Earn offers this option for you. It's a completely different setup. And if you have trust issues, that's where, and you need to have your quality of service, quality of life improvements. That's what you should consider.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. There's other products out there. All right. Well, thank you very much for and Neindorf. Thank you for
I need to plug the second product.
Oh yeah. Keep going. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Do it.
We want to give you a chance while you're on the platform to shill away.
Product number 2 is DFK Solver, which is a summoning PV calculator, and the purpose is for the people that summon for profit to help them find the most profitable pair. So and again, it operates again fully from Discord. All you have to do is input your hero ID, and the bot will search the entire rental market, compare your hero with the equivalent generation hero on the rental market, produce a matrix of possible outcomes. This is the classic matching bot that on DFK Discord, and we also have one matching bot on our Discord. I believe you also do that as well, which is you produce on your own DFK Adventures website the possible outcomes of between a summon of two heroes. We put a price on each one of those outcomes, That is based on the floor price calculator that we had built and developed that is free to use. So you can input a hero ID on our Discord and you're going to get a valuation of that hero in Jewel. So we produce matrices of all the combinations, assign a price on all of those, draw an average, and then sort the pairs by which one is the most profitable considering summoning costs, traveling fees, and everything. So very big, complicated calculations that boil down the entire thinking process that used to take hours in less than a second.
Yeah, I've been using that over on the Discord as as early as this last weekend when summoning, and I think the nice kind of friendly reminder, and we've built our own kind of nothing ever to this extent of expected value calculators, but that's something that when we had a shared Gen Zero, we often rebuilt that calculation, and like you said, it is manual and very time consuming. And anyway, so I think the interesting thing is there are a lot of unconventional pairs that you wouldn't necessarily think of that can still have a really high value to them, especially when you're looking at perhaps getting mining to strike through. So I've used it and also found a lot of value in that as well.
Yeah, and there, we can understand that there are two kinds of summoners, if we can put them, in different cohorts in a sense. They're the ones that summon to keep. So they're looking for different kind of things. They're looking for the kind of mutations that your website provides. When I'm summoning, I'm using your product because I summon to keep. And there are the players that summon to sell and profit. That's where DFK solver comes into play because it's different finding the most profitable pair than finding the pair that's going to guarantee you the most mutations.
Well, I've just found out about the beard, which is, I think, facial hair number 24, the Craig setting, and it is both the visual attribute that you want to keep and sell because it is the most valuable. I'm just gonna go ahead and state that.
There you go.
It does look pretty cool. I'll give you that.
That's awesome. I'm here for summoning the beard. All right. Did we give you enough runway to talk through those products?
Absolutely. Thank you. And I believe we've overstressed. We went north of an hour now.
That's typical for us. We tend to ramble and we have a lot of fun doing it. So, hey, what the heck? Keep it going, right?
Absolutely, cool. For sure. All right. Well,
cool. And thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for jumping on, and we'll have to do this again. I'd really like to know a lot more about the indexer proposal, and ask you some questions offline about that, and also how you guys are doing your floor price calculations. That's something that I've wanted to incorporate on my own, just for my own purposes. So take care, guys, and have a great afternoon. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.